Our journey from Alpine to the Truth or Consequences took us via El Paso. It's a huge city and sits right on the Mexican-Texas border.
We're at the pilot. We've just got diesel, so we've lined up with the big rigs and we've gone round to the cat scales. I've just got another cat scale done because I loves me a cat scale. We've adjusted the links on our Blue Ox weight distribution system, and I'm curious to see, has that thrown any more weight forward onto my front axle? But if you see, there's just Leanne and there is big rigs. Whoa, absolutely everywhere. And a year ago this was absolutely terrorized us, and we would have come in here and we would not have known what to do, and now it's just, it is what we do, isn't it?
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy. Mike in the Suburban, and he's off to pick up his wife at El Paso. He's recognised the car and the trailer, and he give us a wave, so that's awesome. That's made my day.
Yeah, I love it when these things happen.
Yeah.
For years in the hot springs for its many homeopathic benefits. Spanish settlers established a mission and community at Los Colones along the fertile Rio Grande Valley, several miles from here. Occasionally, they would travel north to these mineral waters, calling it Agua Caliente de las Colones, or Hot Springs of the Doves. In the 1880s, cowboys from Texas working for the John Cross Cattle Company built the first bathhouse here to soak their weary bones after a long day in the saddle. As other Anglo and European settlers arrived, they created the town of Colones Hot Springs, which was renamed Hot Springs with the opening of a post office in 1914. The hot waters were famed for their healing properties because of the high mineral content in the springs, including high concentrations of sodium and magnesium, creating a natural form of Epsom salts infused with 36 other minerals, and for not having a noticeable sulfur smell often found in other hot mineral springs. Visitors would come to the area on holiday or to rest and recuperate from a variety of medical conditions, such as polio, tuberculosis, measles, and other illnesses. In the first half of the 20th century, Hot Springs, New Mexico became a popular destination, with people making annual pilgrimages to stay for weeks at a time and soak in the hot mineral springs. But with the advent of pharmaceuticals, the medicinal tourism we had enjoyed as the mainstay of our local economy began to wane. The convenience of being able to take a pill at home soon had a dramatic impact on our town. Realizing this economic trend was becoming a permanent reality, some townspeople seized upon a unique opportunity presented by the popular radio game show Truth or Consequences, hosted by Hollywood personality Ralph Edwards. To celebrate the 10th anniversary of the show, a contest was held in 1950 with a cash prize and big celebrity party for any town that would name itself after the show. Hot Springs held a divisive referendum which passed and legally changed its name to Truth or Consequences, New Mexico. Ralph Edwards elected us as the winner, in part due to the Carrie Tingley Children's Hospital that treated children with polio. We celebrated with a giant fiesta on the first day of April with Ralph Edwards and the celebrity friends he brought to our town.
We are just outside a small town in New Mexico called Truth or Consequence. It had another name before that, which was Hot Springs, due to the mineral hot springs which are alongside the river, which has now been dammed by the Butte Dam, which was the largest engineering project before the Hoover Dam. So we've left TOC, we've come up to a T intersection, and we are turning right, just past the Butte Dam. We are in the middle of Nottalock, New Mexico, and you'll be seeing some of the footage and going, why are you out here? Well, Mr. Richard Branson has a little
Going concern.
going concern out here. We're going out to the SpacePort America to see what Mr. Branson's been up to. Pretty interesting. I know my brother Richard back home in Australia. Hi bro, love you mate. He's well into his space stuff, so I thought that'd be pretty cool.
I'll just pull up and go, hello mate, am I allowed to have a look at that?
Middle of the New Mexico desert. We're about 20 miles southeast of Truth or Consequences. We went to the information centre this morning just to get an idea on what there was to see around, and she told us that SpacePort America was out here. There's no signage or anything else, but it's the most amazing area. They launch aircraft into space, and they're going to launch some this year.
So behind me is one of the Virgin spacecraft. This site is owned and operated by the state of New Mexico, and Mr. Branson is the tenant here. Off in the background you can see what will be the basically airport facility for when this is fully operational. The things you find when you go looking. Just left our RV park on Elephant Butte Lake, and we are going up to look at some small communities. Used to be big silver mining areas. Pick the silver off the ground, didn't have to dig it up, send it home. Those days are gone. They call them ghost towns, but they're not. There's going to be some old buildings, the old way of life.
Chloride National Forest. The road.
We're in Chloride, New Mexico. We've travelled up through Winston from Truth or Consequence. It's not very big. It is the entrance behind me, takes you up a box canyon, and that's the entrance to the Gila National Forest. So we're going to have a look at that. The lady here is doing some restoration work. Lots of silver mining in this area. And the lady's just explained there's an RV park at the back. It's just started to rain. There's an RV park here. You can get big rigs in here. We're going to go and have a look at that. Find out the cost, because if you were going to come up here, it's really pretty. It's very pretty, very authentic.
Minor store, and he had come from Eastern Canada
Yeah.
down to the Southwest for health reasons. He ran the store between 1880 and 1897. That year he moved his family down to Hillsboro, south of Fairways, leased the store out for a number of years, and in 1908 he sold the Pioneer store to the James brothers. They ran it until 1923. At that time they boarded up all the windows, locked the doors, and just walked away, leaving everything inside, food items included. This building sat sealed like a giant time capsule for over 70 years, and during that time the bats and the rats were pretty much the only ones inside of it. In 1995, my parents started doing restoration on this building, and about 90% of what you see on display was in the building when they first opened it up. Most of the other 10% is from other old buildings that we own here in Chloride, and I'm guessing a good portion of those items would have been purchased through the Pioneer store originally. Labor Day weekend of '77, they were trying to get to Wall Lake, which is on the west side of the mountains from here. They had stopped at the little store over in Winston, visited with the folks that were running it at the time. When they got back out to the motorhome, Dad said he took a wrong turn. Just a block past the store, you have to make either a left or a right. The main road goes to the right, and it was a paved road at that time. The road to the left was a dirt road, and my dad likes to see what's at the end of the dirt road, so I think it was an intentional wrong turn. Mom said she saw buildings up ahead. Of course, it was the buildings here in town. Obviously more buildings than the ranch headquarters would have, so they decided to drive in and see what it was. Most of the buildings were boarded up, grass and weeds growing up tall, nobody out stirring about, and they said short of having a tumbleweed blow down the middle of the dirt road, it looked like an Old West movie set that had just been abandoned, and they thought maybe that's why. They stopped in front of these two old store buildings, kind of looked at the town, looked at each other, and Mom said, if this isn't a movie set, this is where we need to be. Just that quickly, they were falling in love with the area. They drove down a little bit further and realized there was a cluster of mailboxes out alongside the road.
Yeah.
Old West movie set wouldn't have had mailboxes because they didn't have that kind of mail service in the old days. That meant this is a real town, which means there's a chance you could own property here. And they thought that was kind of exciting. The fellows come out into his front yard. I suppose checking to see what these outsiders were doing in his town.
Strangers in town.
Yeah. Well, he was on my mom's side of the vehicle, so she rolled her window down to try and talk to him, ask him, why was the town built? Why did it die out? And what was the history here? A bit. He said, well, get out. He was an old-time cowboy, so it was like, get down off your horse or get down off your wagon. So they went and stood under the shade trees with him and visited with him. The more they talked to him, the more he warmed up towards him. Finally, he said, well, come on in and meet Mama. You'll scarcely believe what Mama's got in the house. Well, that was his wife, Cassie. With the town. They're intrigued with the stories they're hearing. They've fallen in love with this little old couple.
Yeah, they're already sold, yeah.
Yeah. And finally, my dad asked if there was any property for sale. And they said they thought the place across the street might be for sale. So my folks walked over to look at it. Now, at that time, the house had been sitting empty for almost 20 years. The chimney had collapsed onto the roof, caved the roof in. The floorboards had rotted out, and there were literally trees growing up through the middle of the house. The Hobbs, and they got the name of the lady who owned the property and her phone number. Now, you have to remember, this is the beginning of the long holiday weekend. My dad was hot to trot for that property. He
Ready
didn't want
to
to
go.
wait 3 days till they got back.
It might have been snapped up.
Yeah, there were 2 5-party lines that served this entire area. Not just Chloride, but probably close to a 400 square mile area. So Cassie said she'd have to check the line and make sure it was open. It was. Before she would hand the phone over to my dad, she said, now let me warn you about this woman. You watch out for her because she will lie, she will cheat, and she will cuss you out. So you be careful in dealing with her. And the lady answered the phone swearing. He introduced himself, said why he was calling, and he promptly got a sound cussing. They talked for a little while. He made an offer on the property. He got another sound cussing. Now the difference between normal conversation and a sound cussing is normal conversation, every third or fourth word's a swear word. Sound cussing is every word's a swear word, and I'm not sure my dad knew what they were all supposed to mean. Apparently, she could cuss a blue streak. Anyway, he finished the conversation. After he hung up, he turned back to Cassie and he said, Mrs. Hobbs, how do you know this woman? Oh, she's my sister. Well, my parents ended up buying the property. And the first weekend they had possession, they were just trying to get enough of the land cleared that they could drive onto the property with their motorhome. It was so overgrown you could hardly walk onto it. And that weekend, all 7 of the old-timers, 1 and 2 at a time, came up and sat on the front porch with them, told them who all had lived there, what kinds of things had happened. Town marshal had lived there. There'd been gunplay in the front yard. It was the very first ranger station for the Gila National Forest, and it went on and on. At the end of the weekend, Mom's like, we can't tear this down. There's too much history there. So they tore it apart, board by board, cut out the rotten stuff, rebuilt it, and it's the house where they... Now, Montoya, for example, is number 30. So if the Montoyas came in to make a purchase or to make a payment on the account, all that the clerk would have to do is go to the page with number 30, which is going to be right here, and all their paperwork, it's right here under this little clip. And, of course, each customer had their own little clip.
Well, you heard Linda's explanation of Chloride and the town. She just further went on to say you can buy a lot here in Chloride if one was to be for sale for $3,000. This is just absolutely unbelievable. Everywhere you look, there is something to hold your interest. I'm in the RV park just off the main strip. There's a lovely deer looking at me here. It's super quiet. It's very lovely here. There is an RV park here. I'll get Lee to put this in the video. It has 5 spots only, but they are full hookup. There's water, there's sewerage, and there's electric. There's birds here, there's wildlife, there's walks, there's hikes. What an absolute gem of a find. We had no idea what this was here. It's just, that's the thing that really excites us about travelling. This is a log cabin, the back end of town near the rest area, just across from the RV park. It's called the Grafton Cabin. We attempted to take the track to the canyon in the Gila State Forest. It's an unimproved road. The truck is just a little bit too big for where I think we were heading. Would have been really good though. 5 miles, steep cliffs, petroglyphs.
Box Canyon.
Box Canyon. Right, we just popped into the general store at Winston. Got me a caffeine top up, some candy, and Lee grabbed, what did you grab, Lee? A couple of ice creams?
One for you.
One for me. We've had a wonderful day exploring this part of New Mexico. I can thoroughly recommend it. Saturday morning in Truth or Consequences. It's got this quirky, colourful, eccentric, and I mean that in all the nicest possible ways, feel to it. Lots of art, lots of yoga, lots of coffee, a youthful resurgence, I think you'd probably call that. It's typical New Mexico. We love it. We're heading back to Silver City.
We arrived safely in Silver City, New Mexico for another adventure, but we both had head colds and thought a week of recovery would do us better. We met up with Sherry and Jeff, and other than that, we just had a quiet time. Please subscribe, like and share our videos. Until next time in Arizona, take care.